Welcome to Takaro, the podcast where we break down the news of today for you. I'm Kiran, and I love learning about and keeping up to date with what is going on in the business and the economic world. And so I think that's what we're going to be talking about today, right?
That's right. I am Kanya, and I'm going to be assisting Kiran in explaining all these terms that are going to come up now. I'm sure you've heard your parents talking about the economy, about the stock market. So there's a lot of stuff we are going to be unwrapping in today's episode. But we also have to make sure, Kiran, that we don't make it boring, right?
No, we won't make it boring. We'll make it easy to understand. And I think it's really important to understand, the concept of an economy, what's happening, why is India in the news so much from a growth perspective. A lot of other countries are actually looking at India as the next big growth market. What does that mean? So we'll make it interesting and easy for all of us to understand.
But before we go into that, a little celebratory dance from the two of us here.
Woohoo!
Yay! Because our
Yay!
amazing athletes at the Paralympics have won 25 medals. This is our highest ever medal tally.
Wow, that is a crazy good performance by our Paralympians.
Yeah, and Kiran, do you remember? Quiz time, everyone. Kiran, do you remember how many medals
Okay,
we won in the last Paralympics that took place in Tokyo? We mentioned this in the last episode, but I'm going with this again.
we did, and I still remember it was 19.
Very good, very good. That's right. And it looks like we might have a few more medals before the Olympics are done on Sunday. So we're hoping for a lot more. But you know something that I'm super thrilled about? Now, 10 out of these medals so far have been won by the women athletes. Isn't that
Wow,
cool?
that's amazing.
Yeah. In fact, including my personal favorite, Sheetal Devi. Remember, I mentioned that last time? She's 17 years old, she's a para
Yes.
archer, and she's won a bronze medal along with Rakesh Kumar in the mixed team competition.
I mean, each one of these athletes, they've overcome so many hurdles, challenges, and gotten to where they are today. So we should really be proud of them. Sheetal Devi, Avni Lekhara, Preeti Pal, Sachin Khilari, and many others.
Like I said, we are going to have a good chance of winning a few more medals before this is all done. So, fingers crossed for that.
Fingers crossed.
Now, with that out of the way, Kiran, let's talk money.
Let's do that. And what I want to also start with is by saying that whether you're a kid, whether you're an adult, very often people don't understand the economy really well. And I think it's really important for all of us to understand the Indian economy, companies, stock markets, just so that we understand how all of it works. The reason is the Indian economy is growing. There are a lot of debates about the actual number of or the percentage of growth, but what is unquestionable is that it's growing. And so let's talk about one part of it to start with, right? We'll talk about what the economy is, but we'll also get into the stock market because the stock market is on fire.
Let's start with the basics. What is the economy? What is the stock market? So, the economy is like a very big system where people make things, sell things, buy things, and they do all of this using money. So, it's like a big marketplace where everyone works together. We share things or even services with each other. Services basically where you do something for someone else, right? It's how a community or country manages its resources to get what it needs.
It's like a game of trading and sharing, right? So, for example, when your parents go to a shop and they give money to buy food or your toys or clothes, the people who work in that store then use that money to go buy themselves food and clothes and whatever else it may be.
And everyone plays this game, right, to get what they need or want, and that's how the economy works. So it's about people helping each other by trading things. So even you tomorrow, if you decide to say bake a cake and you sell the cake, you are actually contributing to the economy. Isn't that cool?
That is super cool.
Next point. What is the stock market?
Let's imagine that the stock market is like a another giant game.
I love games.
Yeah, it is probably the best way to explain anything and also experience. So the stock market is like a game, right? Where people can buy and sell tiny portions of a company or tiny pieces of a company. And these tiny portions or pieces of a company is called a stock or a share.
It's like, imagine a candy store, maybe your favorite candy store. Now, instead of just one person owning the whole candy store, they decide to divide it into many, many small parts. And these parts or pieces are like tickets. They sell it in the form of tickets and they say, I own a small part of this candy store and you can own a small part as well.
So, how many of you want to own a part of a candy store, right? It's
Oh,
like buying the shares of that candy store. Now, that would be amazing. Now, what's important to understand is just because you bought the share doesn't mean you get the candy for free. You are just buying a part of that company or that candy store. So, if the company, if that candy store does really well and it sells a lot of candy, then that share that you have suddenly becomes worth a lot more money, and you can actually sell that share to make some money for yourself, which then gives you money to go buy candy from the candy store, right? So it's very
exactly.
important to understand that just buying a share in the candy store does not give you free candy. You have to still trade that share.
That's the most important part of this entire analogy or the game that you've explained here, Kiran. Just because you own a share does not equal to free candy. But if your candy store is selling a lot of candy, you can sell your share and get lots of money and then buy a lot of candy for yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
It's also possible, though, that sometimes a candy store will not do so well. And in that case, your share will not be as valuable, right? You might not be able to sell it for as much money.
Oh, yeah, of course. I mean, every candy store is not going to do well. So you have to really think about which candy store you want to buy the stock of. And now, if you think about the stock market, you need to think about which company that you want to buy the stock in. And you need to do a lot of research to understand it. Is, if you keep with the candy store example, is it in a mall where there is a lot of people coming in? Is it in a place where people can see it? Is it constantly crowded? So, a lot of these things that you have to think about before you decide which candy store to buy a stock in, and that's similar to what you do in the share market.
Yeah. And for example, if you realize that a lot of candy stores are doing really, really well, maybe it also makes sense to then invest your money and buy shares in a dental company. Don't you think?
That is a good twist. Yeah, 100%. I mean, if candy stores are on fire, then yes, you should also buy stock in a dental company and toothpaste companies and whatever else.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And that's how the economy works, right? One thing will affect the other. If one thing is doing well, the other thing might do well or not so well. It's all connected.
Yeah, so as we were saying, the stock market is on fire because there are more and more people investing in these shares. And I'm sure a lot of your parents already own shares and therefore they actually own a part of a company, which is super cool.
In fact, here's an activity for you to do today. You can go and ask your parents if they own shares, and if they do, you can ask them what kind of companies they own shares in, right? You could also check, maybe there's a candy store in there, for all you know.
And why did they buy those shares, right? Because that's really important. What
Yeah.
was the thought process? Why did they think one share was better than the other? So you understand how they are thinking and you can understand more about the economy as well. Now, the stock market is made up of people like your parents and me and Deb Kanya who are investing in stocks directly or indirectly, right? It is also made up of large companies that invest in other companies, that buy stock in other companies. Now, these could be banks, these could even be foreign companies, companies based out of India that are buying shares of Indian companies. And so the number of people who are directly investing is growing. And that's a really important thing to understand is that we are called the retail investors and we are investing directly into the stock market more and more. What that means is that companies in India now have more money to grow more. And so everything results in the economy growing faster and faster.
Now, it's important to know that the Indian economy is growing for many, many reasons. Some of them are India is a very, very young country, right? We have a very large
Mhm.
population. and that population is very, very young, which means a lot more people who can be in the workforce and who can keep continuing to do the trading, like we told you, buying, selling, contributing.
Making new goods, making new products,
Yeah.
and in fact, maybe some of our listeners are also part of that young, upcoming, future potential workforce, right?
That's one of the key reasons why the Indian economy is doing well. The other is we also love investing and building new technology. A lot of that is happening in India. Then our government is also introducing more and more policies to help more businesses grow in India. Say, for example, they're putting more money into building better roads, building better infrastructure, making sure that businesses can run smoothly and well. And companies from outside India also look at India and say, hey, this looks like a good place for me to start my business. And that's always great for the economy as well.
So when we speak of the economy, you will also hear terms like Sensex and Nifty in India. It's interesting to understand how these work. The main stock market index in India is called the Sensex. Now, what is a stock market index? So, a stock market index for India basically is like a big scoreboard which shows how well a group of companies are doing. So instead of going to every single company and then seeing if how well, how badly they're doing, the stock market index groups all of these companies together and gives one average overall look of how the companies are doing. So imagine if you have a basket full of toys, all different types of toys, cars and dolls and balls and Lego. If you wanted to know how well your toys are doing overall, if they're clean, if they're dirty, if they're broken, if they're perfect, you'd look at the whole basket and just take an overall view of whether those toys are in a good condition or not. You're not going to go into every single toy and see if each one is going to be in the perfect condition, right? So the stock market index is like that basket of toys. It shows how the prices of many of these companies' stocks are going up or down together. And it makes it easy for you to understand if the economy, therefore, and if the share market, therefore, is going up or down as a whole. And in India, that's called the Sensex. And Sensex has been growing, really growing for a year or two actually right now. And since the beginning of this year, since the beginning of 2024, it has grown significantly by 15% almost, which is actually quite large for a national stock market index. And nowhere else are you seeing that kind of growth, which is why everyone's really excited about the Indian economy and, the money coming in and the share market growing.
But the economy is not always going to go up, right? There are times when things don't look
Yes.
so good.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's also important to understand. So there are other economies in the world,
Hmm.
economies like Japan, which are struggling. They are actually going through a decline in the economy, which means that they're struggling to find investments coming in. They're struggling to find new products being built. And many countries in Europe are also struggling because they have an aging workforce. Just like Debbie talked about a young workforce in India, an aging workforce means there are no young people to come in and take over jobs. So India is in a unique position because right now everything is growing, but there are other economies in the world which are not as fortunate right now.
And other economies will impact India's economy just as India impacts the rest of the world. I hope you've kind of got a good understanding of the basics of what the economy means and how money is made in the country, what the stock market means. If you have any questions, you know what to do. You just need to write into us. You can head over to our website, which is www.takarokids.com. Send in your messages, do that activity we asked you to do, find out what your parents reasons are for investing in the stock market in certain shares. Tell us what you've learned. Maybe tell us what kind of shares and stocks you'd like to invest in, right, in the future when you're grown up.
And like Debbie said, if you have the time, you should also go and research some companies in the Indian stock market and tell us why one is probably better than the others and why some are doing better than the others. I am telling you, it is a really interesting thing to go and research companies and understand why some companies are growing, why some are not. and tell us all about it. We're waiting to hear from you. And so until next time, have a safe and happy week.
Bye bye.
Bye.